So, one of the shortest simanim in the entire Tur Bit Yosef compilation, very interesting, is on the topic of, we call heter iska. Heter iska literally means in Aramaic, lehatir is to permit, and iska lit'asek in Hebrew, in original biblical Hebrew, means to work with something, to struggle with it, to negotiate with it. It's very interesting. The first time the word esek appears in Hebrew, it appears by Yitzchak Avinu when he's fighting with the Perishtim over access to water. So he finds his servants dig this well, and the Perishtim fight with him over it, and he calls it esek with a sin, right? Because they... It's funny, in modern English, at least in the black community, they'll use the word giving someone the business, like to fight with someone or to give them a hard time. So they fought with him, they struggled, they whatever it was in esek, but business is always a little bit dirty, so I guess that's the origin of the word. So heter iska is a very interesting concept. Really, it's asur for you to lend anybody money or food or clothing and to expect back anything but exactly what you gave them. We talked about this last week. If I lend you $100, I expect back the $100. I'm not speculating on the yen or the euro or the peso. I need my $100 back. If the dollar became more expensive or less expensive, we used to be much more sensitive to this. In this day and age of Mordechai Eliyahu, was a very famous one, chief rabbi of Israel. There was a dan in Beersheba for 35 years. He held very simply that the only fair way to do it is to go by the amount, whatever it is that you borrowed. So if I borrowed 100 pounds of wheat, I pay back 100 pounds of wheat, etc. Assuming that the Torah forbids lending something with ribbit, with interest, because it's a way of taking advantage of someone who's poor and can't help himself, the question would be, what of the economy? If you'd like for people to become financially independent, or in the case of Israel, to own homes, right? A nice small bedroom and a half apartment in Yerushalayim costs like $50 million today. So what do you do if you want to buy an apartment? You probably can't afford it. No one can afford it because they're really expensive. So is there a mitzvah to purchase properties in Israel? Should we just let them all belong to the banks and rent for the rest of our lives? I mean, maybe we could. Chazal already permitted a number of things. The way we understand and interpret this today is effectively that it's the understanding of the Rishonim on what's mutar and what's asur in terms of loans. If you're destitute, you're poor, and I lend you money, then it's asur for me to take advantage of your poverty because you're going to agree to whatever terms I give you. It seems, according to the Rambam, that even if someone destitute agrees to this, it's still asur because I'm still taking advantage of you. You might agree because you have no choice. People go to the mafia to borrow money too. I don't know about Italy, but it happens here in America. So they borrow money because they have nowhere else to go, or because they're involved in illegal businesses and they can't exactly go to TD Bank and sign up for a line of credit. So your back is up against the wall. You're going to make bad decisions. You're going to borrow money wherever you can find it. The question is, when it comes to capital, when it comes to investing in a business or investing in someone's farm, maybe a vineyard, it could be that you're brewing beer, that you're looking to purchase animals and to start your own herd, it's a little bit tricky. Is there technically a mitzvah in the Torah to become financially independent? Maybe not a mitzvah per se. There's a mitzvah to give tzedakah and you can't do it without having money. The question is, does everybody have the obligation to go out and make as much money as we can so we can give tzedakah? Maybe our time is a little better spent, learning or spending time with our families, etc. We hold today, and for a variety of economic reasons, we hold this to be the case, that there is definitely a mitzvah to lend someone money, even if it's for profit, right? So clearly, and just to be clear about this, someone's poor, there's a mitzvah to give tzedakah. Someone is poor and is eligible for tzedakah, but you can't afford to make that money a gift. There is a mitzvah, 100%. There is a mitzvah to lend the money, even just to get it back without interest. So if I had the money, I'd give you a $1,000 gift. I can't afford it. I'm going to need the money back. I don't need it today. I don't need it tomorrow. You'll give it to me by Pesach. So this is a mitzvah midoraita. On top of this mitzvah, I have the mitzvah of not taking interest and not harassing you about paying the money back, etc. if you'd like to become financially independent, we still hold that there's a mitzvah. And I say we hold there's a mitzvah because the reasoning has to be compelling enough to not suspend an isur midoraita, but to work around it. You have to find a way to make this permissible. If what I give you is a loan, right, meaning I'm giving you the money and I expect the money back, it becomes asur midoraita to expect back any more than I gave you. But what happens if, I'm using this as a random example, two Italian guys who earn their money legitimately, we'll call them Emmanuel and David. They get together and they decide to invest in a company, right? They're producing cheese. So, is it okay if Manuel brings the money and David does all the work? Is it okay that they invest in something and both benefit from the profits? It's not necessarily a loan to someone who's poor. I don't know if it counts as tzedakah. But if Manuel is the money guy, then he says, look, I have $1 million. I have many millions, but this is one of them. I'm going to lend the money to David so that he starts this business, and we're going to become partners in the business. If the business fails, we both fail. If the business makes money, we're both entitled to 50% of the proceeds. We can buy buildings this way. We can buy animals. We can buy fruits, vegetables, etc. Partnerships happen all the time. If you purchase something with joint ownership, you become what's called shutafim. So there's a difference between something that was done under the general category of a loan, which is I gave you the money and it's my money in your pocket. You own it and what happens to it only over the course of the term of the loan. At the expiration of the term of the loan, I expect my money back. And I cannot expect you to give me money for the purpose of me making it on your back based on whatever it is that you did. However, because it became necessary, given the monetary system that we currently benefit from, it became necessary for people to have availability, for liquidity, basically to be easier to come by, and for liquid funds, for capital to become easier to work with. Everything today is based on money. You can buy and sell things. Everything has a price, even our politicians. It's all a function of negotiation. So, if I become a partner with you in the proceeds of this loan, it becomes permissible for me to share in the proceeds. How exactly it's worded and what exactly we do with it is a little bit delicate. So it's become the consensus from the Achronim going over the Rishonim who permitted this. This started probably in about the 17th century, a little before the Reformation, where we effectively look at half of the loan as a loan. In other words, I'm lending you the money, and therefore I'm not entitled to any kind of profit or any kind of benefit from it. The other half, we look at it as a partnership. And so maybe my potential gains in the partnership might be limited. The simplest form of partnership, right? The two partners in an LLP would be Manuel has 50%, David has 50%. It's fair, it works. If we make $1, we each keep 50 cents. If we lose, if we have to keep the business going, we both have to maintain our equity by continuing to invest at the same rate. What happens if you have a majority partner and a minority partner? What if the guy who does all the work gets 70, 75%, and the guy who invests the money expects only 25%? Is it illegal or contrary to halakha for us to divide the profits this way? What if I have two businesses? This one I'm more actively involved in, this one I'm not. Is it fair of me to expect 50% from everybody, or that we all go in, at equal proportions? So there's nothing technically halachically wrong with us having the proceeds of the profits, proceeds of the business activities divided up a little bit differently, right? So it becomes a little bit semantic, because if it were a pure loan, then it would be forbidden for me to take any kind of profit from it. But if that were the case, I wouldn't lend you any money, you wouldn't have any business. So what we do is we say, fine, a certain portion of the money that I'm going to lend you is going to entitle me to a certain kind of partnership in this business. As a loan scenario, I expect to recover at least the principal of my funds. So there's an approximate half-half approach where we say half the money is basically a loan that I'm not going to take interest from, but I can go after you and I can have the Beit Din liquidate your assets in order to pay me back. And half of it would effectively be my contribution towards partnership. And the money that I retain from the business would be, the money, the profits that we realize from the business would be a payoff on my percentage of equity, percentage of partnership. There are laws that are structured this way today, and not for religious reasons, right? I can tell you just from all sorts of bizarre business proposals people have made to me, that it's not uncommon to have a certain degree of partnership, and then to have that percentage of partnership increase or decrease over time. So, for example, some of these places that do things like, I don't know, by the way, again, how exactly things work by Mikhail, but in some places when you lend money, venture capital especially, you might expect, for example, so fine, I'll lend a business, $1 or $2 million, whatever it is, and I expect 25% of the gross profits, as long as a certain percentage of the money is out. Once you pay back, 25% of the funds, my share in the business gets reduced to 18%, and then you pay back the rest, etc., until you pay back the entire loan, in which case I'm no longer, you've bought me out of partnership in the business. Is it illegal to buy out a partner in a business? It happens all the time. I can tell you from my experience as a Rav that some of the best and most delicious fights I've ever seen were among partners in a business, in a restaurant, in a building, especially when there's more than two partners, it becomes all kinds of fun. Especially when the partners married sisters, it becomes even better. Like Sugyot Masechet Yevamot, this one does the purchasing, that one does the cooking, the wives hate each other, the husbands hate each other. But they started out friends. So it's not impossible for us to devise some kind of a contract whereby the funds are disbursed and then paid back on some kind of a schedule, where really at the end of the day, it's not me taking interest from you, it's more that I'm a partner in your business. Now, I came up with the money, you have the talent, you have the the skills, the contacts, etc. So shake your moneymaker, go out and make a killing, and maybe we can word it in such a way that because what I'm doing is really investing funds in a venture capital scenario, giving you the money with which you can start a business. If you no longer want me on board in your business, you just pay me out a certain amount of money at a certain schedule over a certain period of time, and we're okay. Less desirable ways of doing this, they pretty much are not employed in the confines of a heter iska, would be lending money and then just charging you as a fine or a penalty, whatever's outstanding. That's the way your average mortgage works. Really, the bank will tell you, look, we'll give you a 15 or 20 or 30-year mortgage, and as long as the money's out, you pay a certain rate of interest. And it's devised in such a way that the banks themselves would rather have the money than, stretch it out and have you pay the minimum balance the minimum payment every month. So it's almost like you're just paying a fine on the loan until the money gets paid back. And the faster you pay it, the less you have to pay the bank back. So it's a good financial decision on your part. But it's not halachically valid for us to say, look, I'm lending you money and I'm going to punish you until you pay me back. It's effectively a form of ribbit. I'm putting a burden on you, and the burden gets lighter the faster you pay me back. And if you don't pay me back, then I just keep on putting burdens on you. So this concept began in probably around the 1700s. I mean, it's referred to already by the Rishonim, where I can lend you money that you'll invest, and we'll share the profits in a certain way. So it could be that I say, look, and this is, by the way, how agriculture works almost to this very day. Very few farms. In America, it's definitely the small minority of farms that actually operate financially independently. So a farm will say, look, I just bought a bunch of geese from one guy, for example. So he would be borrowing the money to buy goose eggs or to buy goslings. He'll raise them to a certain size. He'll sell them at whatever he can get for them. He'll cover the spread. And very often it's not enough for him to buy next year's geese or to buy the animals that he needs to replace or whatever. So the bank is effectively saying, we're going to give you all the money that you need, and you're going to pay us back at a certain rate of interest. So in antiquity, it was the same thing. I can say, look, you've got land, you've got a healthy back and healthy hands and healthy legs. I'll buy you, 100, 200 pounds of wheat berries, basically of grains, You plant them, you raise them, take care of them, harvest them, mill them, etc., and then we'll split the proceeds in a certain way. And that's permissible. It's permissible. Perhaps it's permissible because there's a certain element of risk. In other words, it's not like I'm charging you interest and I'm going to a court in order to enforce the interest that you owe me, because by virtue of the fact that I lent you money, you owe me more than I gave you. Here we become partners because I assume a certain degree of the risk. And that also tends to be a staple feature of the Heter Iska, that it's not just a nice semantic way of circumnavigating the Heterim and Isurim, what's permissible, what's forbidden, according to Halacha. It really is my getting involved with you. That's an example I make out of this is Greece, because Greece is funny for many, many reasons. Number one is that the entire financial world has an earthquake every time Greece decides it's not going to pay back its loans on time, right? We borrowed the money, doesn't mean we never want to pay you back, or that we enjoy it, or that we have to. And every time they threaten to default, all of a sudden Germany gives them more money, because, of course, Greece complains, Germany pays. That's how the European Union works. It sounds like they're doing us a favor by preventing Greece from going bankrupt, when in reality, if they had allowed Greece to go bankrupt years ago, Greece would probably be in a recovery period right now. Everybody gets shocked when a country that borrowed money doesn't pay it back. You know that the debt scenario has two possible outcomes, right? Like there's a reason you charge interest, and one of them is because you're not sure you're going to recover your principal to begin with. So if you pay me back in the happy scenario, I lend you, let's say, $100 billion, and you give me back 105, 110, that'd be tremendous. I would love it. We can continue doing this for the rest of my life or yours. If I lend you the money, I'm taking a risk. Maybe I won't get the money back. So I might be upset because I'm not getting my ribbit. We're not going down that path. What we're saying is, it really is my money invested. And if I bought you 100 kilo of grains, and you planted them, and half of them got eaten by birds or by rodents, my money's lost. I was hoping to employ you in such a way that I become a partner in the proceeds, but let's be honest, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, maybe I'll lose a certain amount, maybe I won't. So the chidush was that you can make a portion of the loan an actual loan, and so the halachot, as we're familiar with them, would apply to that portion. And with the other portion, you become a partner in the business, which means I'm entitled to certain proceeds, to certain profits, but I'm also obligated to assume a certain degree of risk, which pretty much happens every time you lend money. And if you're not familiar with the way that works, just lend money to Greece and see how fast you get it back. Or Cyprus, for that matter.
Oh, they'll borrow to someone else.
To Spain,
they'll borrow to someone else and
Italy,
give it back to you.
Right, exactly. They'll pay you back in Deutsche Marks, which no one understands how that happens, but it works.
So, is it the way most loans are made in Israel? For business, first of all? And
probably not. It's the way that most halachically valid loans are made. I mean, it's
so
not there are no other loans.
Let's say tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem, I do Aliyah. I want to buy a house in Yerushalayim. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I have to borrow for 70 years.
Let's check against what we just said. So you have to pay back.
So the banks have like an
mortgage.
option for people who are observant to help?
Most every bank in Israel has some kind of heter iska signed. As far as I know, all the big ones do. So if you want to sign, you want a mortgage, for example, the bank has already signed a document in front of the Rabbanut, in front of the Batidin, that this is how their loans are structured. Let's see, I want to buy an apartment in Yerushalayim, right? So again, $50 million for like 10 square meters. It's hard to afford such a thing, so I need the bank's help. The bank steps in effectively as a partner. In other words, they buy the apartment, right? That's how mortgages work. People don't remember this. The banks are always painted as such mean, nasty people. Like, they give you money and let you live in the house. You can stay there, even if you haven't paid yet. I can't take a car until I've at least paid for it or promised to somehow, but this is how it works with a mortgage. So the bank bought the apartment for you, and the apartment itself serves as collateral. If you fail to make the payments, the bank has the right to evict you. It takes forever, of course, because of the courts. But the bank has the right to evict you, and then try to recover what they can on their investment, which was the apartment. We're assuming that the real estate values are going to go up forever, and they might not. But the bank is assuming a certain degree of risk. What happens if the value of the apartment goes down? The bank invests in you. See, here's the funny thing. In order for the apartment to be worth money, you have to keep it somewhat clean. You have to prevent the walls and the floors from getting wet all the time and getting moldy and nasty, and you can't destroy the thing, it has to be repaired. You have electricity, you have water, there's a little bit of maintenance that goes into a house. So the bank is saying, fine, we're partners. You own the house, you take care of it. We'll lend you the money, and if need be, we'll have to take it back. And it could be that by the time they take it back, it's worth less than they paid for it. So they're assuming a certain degree of risk. They're lending it to you really only for your own enrichment, because you could have been renting for the rest of your life, but you want to have equity in something. So instead of paying rent, you can pay a mortgage, but you'll have a house at the end of the day. So that's basically how it works. Now, heter iska is something you only sign when you're lending specifically for the purpose of business activity. It could be that most of the loans made back in the day were made this way. In other words, with this kind of an intention. Again, there's a difference between me telling you, you're a wheat farmer and you want to grow wheat, and I say, fine, no problem. Here's $100,000. At the end of the year, I want back 110. I don't care if you gain. I don't care if you lose. I don't care if there was a drought. I don't care if you're dying of starvation. Like you owe me this money. If you don't pay it, I'm going to take it out of your estate. What happens? What was much more likely to happen, and this is probably because the Gemara says in Masechet Bava Batra that there are 7, maybe 8 levels of giving tzedakah, one more desirable than the other. So there's giving you money when you ask for it. You know who I am, and I know who you are, and you took it, and I gave it, okay, and I ask you to pay it back, or I only give you as much as you need. There's giving you more than you need. There's giving you in such a way that you don't know who you got it from, so you're not embarrassed, and I don't know who I gave it to, that's even better. Giving you more than you need, giving you before you even ask for it. And the highest level of all in giving tzedakah, and again, it's a message lost on socialist society, the highest level of giving tzedakah is not giving anything at all. Fathom that, right? Not giving anything at all, but rather helping you find a job. That's terrible. That's racist, and I'm sorry I said it. But helping you find a job, helping you find gainful employment, where you become independent. I didn't give you anything. I gave you dignity is what I gave you. It's worth more than money. It used to be worth more than money. So helping you find gainful employment, helping you find a job that makes you independent of me and every other person, except for your customers. At least this way you can make a decent living and not be embarrassed about it. That's the most noble thing I can do in terms of charity, in terms of tzedakah, in terms of helping you get on your own 2 feet. So chances are this counts. Not only is this let's say a halachic workaround where I have a halacha that's hard to observe, so we had to find a way to lend money with interest, so here it is. Most loans that were made back in the day were probably made this way. I can give you $20,000 for your daughter's wedding, and then just hope and pray that you pay me the money back someday. Or I can say, look, I'm not giving you the money. I'm going to give you enough money, or I'll give you enough grains that you can go ahead and plant on whatever land it is that you have. Be'ezrat Hashem, you'll be busy, and you'll pay back, and I'll be a partner with you in this, and then hopefully you'll put enough money aside that you won't need to borrow from me anymore. You become independent. So it's not like it's, dirty, greasy banks trying to take advantage of people and squeeze them to death. It's the opposite. That's the most noble form of loan you can make, is a loan that you make in the hope of making someone else money, even though you have an interest in it. Right? I'm well within my rights, halachically speaking, to give someone poor a job and expect him to show up on time and pay him based on how many hours of work he does. That's how the world works. I mean, that's normal. It's not socialist democracy, but how the rest of the world, the normal part of it works. So there's nothing wrong with me expecting something in return for the money, because this really is basically a business education. If people are going to help you, if you can help them, it's a two-way relationship. I mean, it'd be nice if I just gave you a grant and you could start your own business, but only governments do things like that. Just take people, and what do? They tax other people who worked hard for their money, and they give you a gift. It sounds very altruistic, it isn't how the real world works. No one else would do it. Like, give me tzedakah, chesed, fine, but governments do it by fiat. So that's the long and short of the heter iska. I can find anyone a heter iska for just about anything you want to do, as long as it's legal and legitimate, doesn't involve fictitious marriages. We can pull you. We can pull up, Manuel, I'm talking to you. We can we can pull the document in PDF form off of a number of websites. One of them, look it up. It's a good website to have for all things that are related to marriage, divorce, and heter iska. It's the bethdin.org, Bethdin. Even Ashkenazim become Sephardim when it comes to the URL. bethdin.org is the website for the Rabbinical Council of America, aka the Bet Din of America, pretentious name of the rabbis at YU and their followers and supporters, where you can find the prosbot also they have for the Shemitah, in case you borrowed or lent money before the end of a Shemitah year. The end of the Shemitah year cancels debt, so you have that document there too. They have prenuptial agreements, they have postnuptial agreements, they have all kinds of divorce options.
One last question.
It's like Amazon for marital problems.
One last question, Rabbeinu. Tomorrow I am not going to do my, let's say I'm not going to do my Aliyah. I want to either buy a house in America or start my business and borrow money. And I go to a bank called Goldman Sachs. So obviously, it seems a bit Jewish. Do I have to?
It's the only bank that has any Jewish names.
Yeah, it's the only one. I can't think of any other. Do I have to care that the main shareholder of the bank I'm borrowing to is Jewish when I pay my interest to it? Because the loan is not gonna.
Well, ideally, you'd borrow from a bank that has such a thing as a heter iska.
They do have it, like Citibank, Chase, all those guys. Goldman Sachs,
I'm
whatever.
going to go out on a limb and assume that you wouldn't be the first Orthodox
sure.
Jew who ever asked Goldman Sachs if they have such a thing as heter iska.
I'm sure.
The question is, the better question is not, regarding you, your aliyah, when you buy a house over there, but can I, as a shareholder of the company, invest in a company that does this for a living?
Nah, that's not bad. Didn't ask this one, but that's a good one as well.
So that's a little bit more complicated. If I become, there's a couple of layers of complexity here. Rav Moshe Feinstein was asked the question, is it permissible for me as a Jew to invest in a company like McDonald's? Right?
I was thinking the same thing, yeah.
So let's say I'm a member of a teachers union and my pension plan, I might not even know about it. And the unions, which are always anti-business, like the stock market because they're all invested in it. So if I invest in McDonald's, am I guilty of buying and selling non-kosher animals or non-kosher food items for a living? So there's this classic Mishnah Masechet Chulin. I'm allowed to sell non-kosher fish that came up in my net, but I'm not allowed to fish for them intentionally. So I can't hunt whales. I know it's not kosher, I can't eat them. But I'm allowed to sell catfish that came up when I was looking for bass. So Rav Moshe Feinstein held that if you're such a minority investor that your share of the company is pretty much insignificant, really immaterial, that you don't even get those proxy ballots, you can't vote at shareholder meetings. So he said you're null and void as far as halacha is concerned. What happens if the company owns chametz over Pesach, for example?
You're still null and void?
It's the same problem. Well, today they have all these, as part of the contract for the sale of chametz, probably some Jamaican woman is buying your whatever proportionate value of shares in McDonald's you happen to own over the course of Pesach without losing your rights to the profits of them. But they've come to include that as well. So most companies, you're investing in the company. Maybe it's a minority of what they do, so it's kind of batel berov. It's not really their main. In case of McDonald's, it's a hard case to make. But, well, they sell bread, they sell soda, they sell ice cream, they sell meat and milk, they sell non-kosher beef, they sell all kinds of things too. Basically, what you're investing in is a company, it's a brand, it's the company has a valuation. It's more of an investment than anything else. So there are varying degrees of careful. There are people who just choose not to invest in a non-kosher company or non-kosher enterprise. I don't know if we brought it up in the topic of morality, but there are some very curious characters who work in the industry of tzniut that, ask your local Orthodox rabbi about getting donations from a guy like that. But I don't even care what they do in Italy. Not even going to ask the question. But
just get the money.
So, take the money and run. We're back to Steve Miller from 2 weeks ago. I'll post it on your wall tonight. So, the question is
finding those people, or deciding whether or not we take
I hope
the money.
it never becomes any of our problems. I'll be honest with you. But the question is, is your investment enabling this? Are you an active partner in the transgressions involved, or are you just so insignificant that you're not really guilty of it? So it's a good question. it'd be nice to live in a world where we can invest only in the companies that are righteous and moral and do good things, but immoral companies make all the money. So maybe it's a tough sell. So I will let you guys go. We'll continue God's help next week on this and similar topics, and Be'ezrat Hashem we'll give me any questions you have in the meantime. Feel free to, and thank you, Miguel, for the actual practical example of Heter Yischa.
I didn't read it.
You didn't read it?
No. We don't have the time.
So he's the chairman of the board of directors. Like, his bank.